Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Security Navigate Her Coffee Chat series. I'm Beth Anderson, and alongside me is my co-chair, Emma Barkley. We're thrilled you've joined us today for a relaxed, candid conversation about building successful careers in security. Our goal is to connect you with inspiring stories, practical insights, and real-world advice from leading women in the field. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive in.
Welcome everyone to Women in Engineering series. I'm Emma Barkley, and I am joined today with Jill Tietjen, who has a very impressive career of 45 years in electrical engineering. She's written 18 books to date, and she speaks nationally on accomplishments of women, as well as is a big advocate for women in all fields. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. So Jill, do you want to introduce yourself at all to the audience?
Good morning, Emma. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm just going to do just a tiny little introduction. I attended the University of Virginia. We're going to get to that in a minute, I think. I didn't start as an engineering student. I started as a math major. And by the way, I went to the University of Virginia the third year that women were admitted as undergraduate students. I was in the first class that didn't have a cap on the number of women who could be admitted, and I entered as a math major because nobody, not even my PhD engineer father, said that I should consider an engineering education. I found the electric utility industry. I'm actually still in the industry because I sit on a corporate board of an electric utility in Georgia. My 50th college reunion is this June, which is very, very hard to believe. And I also got my MBA at night while I was working for Duke Power Company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I found SWE since I was the Society of Women Engineers, since I was one of the first 10 women to graduate in engineering from the University of Virginia. They didn't yet have a Society of Women Engineers collegiate section there. So I didn't know about SWE until 1979. I found them in a career fair in a gymnasium at North Carolina State University. I've been national president, and that I'm sure will come out as we go through the discussion this morning.
Wow, that is super impressive. And it's crazy to me how you mentioned your father, who didn't even think that you would go into electrical engineering, but you are a part of your father, right? And so I think that is, very impressive and a sign of the times of what you came into, right? Yeah, very, very interesting. So you began your career as an electrical engineer and spent 45 years in the electric utility industry. You mentioned also that you're still involved with the corporation currently. What initially drew you to engineering with all the, and how did those early technical experiences shape your approach to leadership today?
Well, I started at the University of Virginia as a math major in the College of Arts and Sciences. And I learned over the course of really my first semester that I was going to need to get a PhD if I stayed in mathematics, and that I was going to end up being an academic and doing research. That's how it was presented to me, whether it's true or not. And I saw there were people in my dorm, in the hall, girls and boys that I knew who were in the engineering school, and I saw the courses they were taking, and I saw what they were doing, and that's what I wanted to do. So I went to the dean of engineering. I made all of the arrangements to transfer. I am going to do the full version of the story. And then I called my parents. And this is back in the day when the only phone that's in the dorm is the one on the wall in the hall, and you have to call home collect. And so I called home collect, and I asked to speak to both of my parents. Remember, this is my first year in college. And so what did they think? Well, they thought I was pregnant, but no, it was worse. I had transferred to engineering, and Mom said no. And I said, I don't think you understand. I've already done all the paperwork. It's already a done deal. I'm just calling to tell you. And so that's how I got into engineering, applied math and electrical engineering. And then I ended up in the electric utility industry, well, it's not a fluke. I was engaged. We wanted to be in the same place. We wanted to get married. We weren't going to get married unless we were in the same place. And the place that offered us both jobs was Duke Power Company. They're now Duke Energy, but Duke Power Company in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I went to work for them. I love the utility industry. It was the best place for me. It was a planning job. That meant that I was a planning engineer. I was looking at all aspects of the industry, understanding policy, understanding the technical part, doing simulation models of the operation of the power plants. And I was also identified as a speaker. Early on, I was trained as a speaker to go out and give talks for Duke Power. I actually tutored fourth grade math as part of my job. And so, and then tuition reimbursement, they paid for my MBA, which I got at night while I worked there. And so all of those experiences then shaped who I am, because that was my introduction. Well, I was already a speaker, but I got trained as a speaker. And to get my MBA, which I then needed for every single job I've had after that, I've always needed the combination of the engineering degree and the graduate business degree. And so when first husband and I decided that we wanted to move, and then decided we wanted to move to Denver, I needed those degrees. And basically the way I see it is that for me, everything has been a stepping stone. Everything has been a stepping stone to the next step. You know, what I learned in one place, I learned at the utility. Then I was in the coal business for a while with Mobil's mining and coal division, which doesn't exist anymore. And then I went in, and so I learned the coal business from top to bottom around the world, not just in the US, the whole coal business. And then I answered an ad in the Wall Street Journal. They don't even have ads in the Wall Street Journal anymore for jobs, and got a job as a consultant. And what did they want? They wanted my utility experience, and they wanted my coal experience, and all of the modeling knowledge, computer modeling knowledge that I had. And so I've basically been a consultant since 1984, which is, right? Yeah, 40 years.
Yes.
And so everything built on everything else. And you never, I mean, I'm sure there were, of course, bad experiences along the way. And there are some things and some lessons that you hope you didn't have to learn. But basically, the things that you learn provide stepping stones. And if you're keeping your eyes open, I know this is a question we're going to get to later, and looking for opportunities, they arise. The hard part is recognizing that there's an opportunity. And then sometimes you don't know until 20 years later that, oh, I said yes to this opportunity because I was going to need it when I got here. And it was going to so all right, so I'm just going to do this. I can since I know what the questions are.
No, absolutely.
So in 1979, I joined the Society of Women Engineers, and I became very active pretty early in that process. When I moved to Denver, I became very, very active. And one of the women in Denver adopted me and decided that SWE had just introduced the concept of a SWE fellow. Almost every technical society has a classification called fellow, which is it's an honorary classification. It's higher than a senior member. And SWE decided they weren't going to make them dames or something like that. It was still going to be fellows. And so this woman in Denver decided that the women that she knew who had established the Denver section of SWE, which is now the Rocky Mountain section, needed to be fellows, and that I was going to nominate them. And she was going to help me, but I was going to nominate them. And so I started learning how to do nominations. And then this is really the catalyst. So it's coming up.
Yeah.
In 1988, I was elected to the SWE National Board of Directors. And at my very first meeting, Suzanne Genesis, the president, held up the nomination forms for the National Medal of Science and the National Medal of Technology. I'd never heard of them before, awarded by the President of the United States, and said, who's going to do these nominations? 17 women in that room. No one raised her hand. So I did. The first two women I nominated, because I'd now been doing all of these nominations with Helen, the first two women I nominated weren't the right ones. But in 1987 in Denver, we started a Great Women in Engineering and Science essay contest. And in order to do it, we had to do all of the research on the women in order to figure out who they were. That these kids in sixth grade, by the way, in 1988, they had to go to the library. They had to do this in books. There was not an internet. And so, and we learned
certainly
very
not
quickly.
AI, right?
No, absolutely not AI.
Yeah.
No, they had to do it themselves. And we learned very quickly that we better have all the facts, because sixth graders, if they're given particularly an assignment by their class, that they have to write this essay, they just make shit up. And so they lie. They lie. And we were awarding prizes, and you can't do that. You have to know what the facts are. So here I am nominating women, and I realize that Admiral Grace Murray Hopper, if I do a good enough job on her nomination, that she will get the National Medal of Technology. And so I worked on that nomination for 2 years. I did everything that needed to be done, which I will not do the story here, just that fact. And in 1991, right before I assumed the presidency of the Society of Women Engineers, I had been informed that she was going to receive the National Medal of Technology. Wow. Now, you can't tell anybody because you can't upstage the President of the United States.
No.
I mean, I knew, she knew. She was very frail. She asked me to receive it for her in the White House Rose Garden. So in September of 91, on the hottest day of my whole life, I was at the Rose Garden in Washington, D.C., and I'm looking around at the recipients in the Rose Garden going, where are the women? Because I know who they are. I've been doing research on them for 4 years for this essay contest. Where are the women? And so Admiral Hopper was my first successful nomination for the National Medal of Technology. It's now called the National National Medal of Technology and Innovation. 17 women have gotten that award. In the entire time it's been awarded from 1989 to the present, and I've nominated 3 of them. Wow. And I've been at the White House every time. And so the book that I'm actually going to submit today is the first book in the series. There will be 2 books of all of the 77 women who have received the National Medal of Science and National Medal of Technology and Innovation. The first book is 1970 to 2007. Since there's 77 women, it's too many to put in one book. And then the second book will be submitted by the end of the year, and that'll be 2008 to 2024. So the catalyst and why I do this. All right, so there is one more part of the story. In 2003, I met Charlotte Waisman, and she and I started writing our book that was published in 2008 called Her Story, A Timeline of the Women Who Changed America, which is a beautiful, vivid timeline format book of more than 850 women in U.S. history from 1578 now to 2011. And Charlotte said, there's no book like this. And I went, oh, okay. Because I didn't actually believe her. And then at some point, it took us 5 years to get this book published. And somewhere along the way, she told me that at that point in time, out of a standard 500 United States history high school textbook, 500 pages, 7 pages mentioned women. That's 1.5%-ish. It's better now, by the way. We're up to 10%.
Well, we can really grow that number, can't we?
Right. And that's what I do. That's what I do. I write women back into history. They're there. They were there. They just haven't been written about. And why do I do it? Because I can, because I want to, because I was given the skills to do it. I can speak about them. I can write about them. And so I mean, it's still ridiculous when we're 50% of the, actually, 50%-ish of the population and 10% of the history books, which is an improvement in 20 years. And so that's why I do it. And I have now this forum, the Springer Women in Engineering and Science series, through which I write books and others write books about technical women or about technical women's accomplishments. And so we can talk more about that if you want to. But.
Yeah, no. So I just want to kind of take it back to where you first started your story, and you started telling me about all these steps that people have kind of given you along the way, and everything has led to something else. And I think it's fascinating, you coming into your first job, really, and them giving you those skill sets that really set the stage for an illustrious career. And what an amazing career that it has involved the empowerment of women and really bringing their voices to light. And I think that is so critical and so needed, because if you look at stuff that us as women gravitate towards, right? We do like our clothes, we do like fashion, we like other things. We like to see ourselves in other people. And you have started highlighting these stories of women that allow that sixth grader or that ninth grader to start seeing themselves in those individuals and see what they're capable of. Another thing that you mentioned is your public speaking. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm technical, I'm more behind the scenes, I don't have that, upfront presence. But those two things can coexist, right? You can bring forth that technical ability, and also be a great leader, as well as a person that can speak to all those elements.
Yes. All right. We'll do the public speaking first, and then if I remember the other thing that I wanted to say, I'll go back to it. But I mean, people. All right. So this is a true story. When I was in college at the University of Virginia, you have to do an undergraduate thesis in order to graduate. And one of my mechanical engineering professors who taught me structures, actually, that's an interesting thing. Why was he teaching structures? Anyway, he taught me structures, and I almost failed the class. And then I got a tutor. I had to get a tutor. I mean, I couldn't do 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions were just beyond me. And so he hired me as his assistant to one of his graduate students, and I worked on a project on the mechanical performance of polyglycolic acid sutures. Dacryl and Vicryl are the name of the sutures. I've had them in me. My cat, when a previous cat, when she got spayed, she had them in her. We've all had them, but at the time, the surgeons weren't convinced that polyglycolic, these are the dissolvable sutures, that the dissolvable sutures could do the job. And so my professor said to me, you're going to join the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. You're going to submit an abstract for a paper. And if it gets accepted, you're going to go to the conference and you're going to give this paper. This is in college. And so I submit the abstract. It gets accepted. I go to the conference. There are 10 kids in my session, 9 boys and me. And I'm last. And the boy before me was from Clemson, and Clemson and the University of Virginia were big rivals. And he gets up and he starts his talk by denigrating the University of Virginia. So then when it's my turn to get up, I have to defend her honor. And I am gripping the podium so tightly because my knees are shaking so badly that I don't think I can actually stay upright. I never wanted to be that nervous again. And so when Duke Powers said, we're going to send you to Speakers Bureau training, I said, absolutely, I want to go. And so I've written articles about this. I say this over and over and over, and that is anybody can be a speaker. Practice, practice, practice. Right? I mean, when I was an expert witness, one of the things I did was I wrote down every question I thought I could be asked. And then I prepared the answer. Of course, those I never were the questions that I got asked. I always got asked different questions, but at least I was prepared because I had thought about the questions that people were going to ask and I had written down the answers. I mean, you practice, you write it down, you practice in front of a mirror, you practice in front of someone, you ask them, and now you just practice in front of your phone, you record it, you play it back. Oh my God. And the first time you see yourself on video, you just want to die. Okay, so you get over it. And then you get to a point where you can speak. And so practice, 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 practice. The communication skill when you're a technical person, if you cannot sell somebody, you might have the very best design idea, the very best manufacturing idea, the very best something idea. If you cannot communicate written and orally about that idea so that you can convince other people that this is the best idea ever, or it doesn't have to be the best idea, but a good idea and needs to be implemented, then work on it. Practice writing, practice speaking. You can get better. You didn't learn to walk overnight. You didn't learn to ride a bike overnight. You didn't learn to drive overnight. You didn't learn anything overnight. And why any of us think that these skills should just magically appear.
Absolutely. And I think it comes with confidence too. So having people that lift you up and see you as a speaker and invest in you, that also helps. So I like to challenge managers to see what somebody's capable of and really challenge them to, again, be able to articulate their design, their idea, especially as an engineer, so that they are empowered to speak up at that table, but also be able to effectively present it to either C-suite or even, national people that are making these decisions. So your book, Over, Under, Around, and Through, highlights how Hall of Famers overcome adversity. What parallels do you see between the obstacles faced by these women and those faced by women in engineering and security careers today? I know you touched on a few of those, but what in the elements of today do you see as some of those obstacles?
Well, this is really a key point, and I'm so glad that you asked me this question. And this is particularly important for younger people, but it's important for everyone to understand that life is a series of obstacles. That's how it works. You overcame a problem this morning. Okay, so you think you're done for the day. Ooh. And you're not done for the week, and you're not done for the month, and you're not done for the year, because there's going to be another one this afternoon, and there's going to be another one tonight, and there's going to be another one tomorrow, and they're just going to keep coming at us. And this is the message, the mental health message that's really important, which is these, and everybody's obstacles are different. But there's also something very important to understand about that. The obstacles that I'm given are the obstacles for which I have a skill set to deal with, to handle. The obstacles you're given are the obstacles that you have the skill set to handle. And so the obstacles that were in the book ranged from I wouldn't say the minute, because none of them were minute, to really incredibly intense obstacles. The obstacles ranged from incest to murder suicide, to breast cancer, to really pretty significant discrimination, to losing the race for the Senate. I mean, just really very, and then Carlotta Lanier, the youngest of the Little Rock Nine, those were the 9 students who integrated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. I mean, that was a hideous year. She was escorted to school every day by the National Guard after the 101st Airborne left. I mean, just very, very significant obstacles that you get through by a combination of the skills that you have, which include mental intelligence, emotional intelligence, a moral compass and spirituality, social support, passion, perseverance, determination, persistence, creativity, optimism, resilience, and action orientation. And I think I got them all. And you use whichever ones you need at that point in time, but everyone faces obstacles and they face them all the time.
Yeah, no, I think my my tactic really has started to be perspective. And so I'm facing this problem, it's stressing me out, it's keeping me up at night, but is in the grand scheme of things, how can I attack this differently and change my perspective on it so that becomes less challenging, right?
Right.
And so attacking my obstacles on a daily basis as a traveling mom, as a working professional, as being sometimes the only woman at the table, and saying I get to do these different things, I get to be in these rooms, I get to have conversations with Jill, right? So that has been one of my kind of tactics in attacking these. But all of those ways of the emotional intelligence, the creativity, we have the skill set, and like you said, to attack these obstacles head on and come out of it successful, right? So
absolutely. And what you're doing is also called at times reframing. Changing your perspective is also referred to in the literature as reframing. And I mean, for me, what is my chapter in the book is titled, "What is the worst that can happen?" You prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And very, very, very rarely, 1 out of a million, 1 out of 100 million, whatever it is, does the worst happen. Usually it's so much less than the worst that you kind of look at the situation and go, really? That's what I thought was going to happen? Or that's what I thought could happen? When you still, the boss wants to see you. Well, why does the boss want to see you? Well, it's because, and you start in your head, well, I did that wrong, and 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 here's how I'm going to fix and you go in and it's nothing.
It'll be the one thing you did right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go in and you went, well, why did I do that to myself? To make myself so upset and so scared, and to have to do that level of preparation to go into the meeting when that wasn't what it was about at all. And why is it that I do that? And women do it way more than men do.
Oh, we overthink everything. We overthink everything. And
right.
Even a job application. I don't meet these qualifications, so I'm not going to apply for it. Or
I have a true story there. Yes, men will actually apply if they meet 2 of 10 characteristics, and women have to meet 11 of the 10. And so there was a board position that was announced, and I looked at the qualifications and I went, there were 7 of them. And as I recall, I met 5 really well. And so I said, oh, nope, can't apply. And then I kicked myself around my office for about 15 minutes. And I went, you just did it. You just did it. You just did the thing that women do. Go write yourself a cover letter. Go write yourself everything that you need to do to apply. And I applied early before the deadline. And the organization that was advertising this actually sent out another email that said this opening is still available and you might want to consider writing a cover letter, because I had sent a cover letter. I mean, that's why they did it. And I went, oh, okay, yeah, of course I didn't get it, but at least I applied.
You tried.
You can't, the answer is already no if you don't try. If you don't apply, if you don't submit your qualifications, if you don't submit your resume, if you don't submit a proposal for a job, if you don't do whatever, the answer is already no. So why give yourself a no when there's a chance that it could be a yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how we start getting more women in the history books, right? So
Right.
You studied
Right.
the 5 leadership principles used by women at the forefront of social reform: vision, ethics, and values, community, stewardship, and passion. Which of these resonates most strongly with your own leadership journey?
Well, I think it would be, vision is absolutely there, but it's community and passion. It's where are the women? And then my community is the women, to tell their stories, to bring them out of the quote unquote darkness, to make sure that the fact that you and I are sitting here having this conversation, it all goes back to Admiral Hopper and that 1991 National Medal of Technology, who invented the computer compiler, because we wouldn't have the technology that underlies all the technology that underlies what we're doing from a computer standpoint. But then we also need the electricity, which of course my business. But one of the women who contributed to the electricity field, her name was Edith Clark. I've now written a fair amount about her in various books. And she wrote the textbook that power system engineers used for years, that gave us the understanding and provided the algorithms for how to design. It's called the transmission system. Those are the big wires. The little wires that come to your house are the distribution system, but the big wires are the transmission system. And she provided the first graphical calculator, and those are the algorithms that underlie what we do today. And so there are some people, there better be more after the stuff I'm doing, who know who Edith Clark and Admiral Hopper are, but we don't ever think of them. We think of Tesla and Westinghouse for electricity, and Thomas Edison, did everything. So we think about Thomas Edison, but we don't think about the women. And my job, so that's the passion. My job is to tell the stories of the women.
No, absolutely. I love that. So, that's the whole thing I'm doing behind creating this segment with Women in Engineering Coffee Chat is really kind of telling the stories of different roles that are out there that women don't necessarily always see themselves in, but these exist, and I think they are so purposeful in creating all these great technologies. And we have all those skill sets that you mentioned before. We have the creativity, we have the emotional intelligence, and especially in security, I think that having that emotional intelligence when we're talking about human behavior and protecting people and assets really shines. So that's a great kind of segue into the next question. So with much of your writing focused on recognizing and taking advantage of opportunities, what advice would you give women seeking to identify and act on opportunities in emerging security technologies such as AI, analytics, identity management, video, etc.?
So first, keep your eyes and your ears open. This goes to the next question, but meet as many people as you can. make sure they understand your skills and abilities. Over time, all right, so there are kind of two ways that people can help you in senior people. One is called mentoring and one is called sponsorship. A mentor is a person who talks with you, says, it might be a good idea for you to get an MBA. Maybe you should join Toastmasters so you can work on your speaking, and help you, and you ask them questions. I have this interview coming up. Would you mind doing a role playing with me? That kind of stuff. That's what a mentor does. A sponsor is someone who is 2, maybe, or 3 levels above where you are, sometimes 1. Certainly you want your boss to be a sponsor too, but higher is also good. Who is in a meeting where someone says, we need someone to tackle this project. And they say, I bet Emma could do that job. And Emma doesn't even know this job exists. And Emma doesn't even know that she's being considered for it, but that person is a sponsor. And I've had those as well. I've had mentors and I've had sponsors, and I have sponsored. I was sitting at a groundbreaking ceremony outside at the University of Colorado at Boulder, waiting for the whatever it is, the dozer to dig the parking lot. And I knew the man sitting beside me. He was a senior level executive at the utility company. And he turned to me and he said, Jill, you're going to be the president of the trade organization. I don't know at that point in time whether I was even on the board of that trade organization. I might have been by then. But he said, you're going to be president. And he planted the seed. And I was the first woman president of that organization, the first woman on the board also. But he was serving in the role of the sponsors. So when someone says to you, and this is really important for the women. When someone says to you, you're going to be the president, you're going to have this role, you're going to take on this project, you're going to lead this, you're going to do that. Don't go into the, not me, smallness, that I couldn't do that. No, don't do it. They are seeing that you have the skills, you have the ability, you have the aptitude. And so get as prepared as you can, learn absolutely as much as you can, do everything that you do excellently, and someone will see you. I'm going to see a friend this weekend at the Super Bowl party, and her reputation was she could do most, DOMOST. This man who was her sponsor said, you give her the job because she can do most anything you tell her to do. You give her this project, she's never done it before, she does it on time and under budget. You give her this project, a power plant has to come online, she gets it done on time and under budget. And so you want those mentors, you want those sponsors, and you can't be the shrinking violet who says, oh no, not me.
Yeah. I have, so in addition to being a sponsor, I've heard it, I like to preach on being a mentor, sponsor, or career impactor, right? So seeing potential in somebody that they might not see in themselves, and giving them those opportunities to kind of cross over and see if that is like a place that they see themselves or where they want to be, in addition to kind of those sponsorship opportunities. Another thing that I've really tried to refrain is not that, oh, you're being too kind, or, the other things, and just learn to say thank you, right? So instead of saying, oh, Emma, you were great, you rocked this opportunity, and yes, of course I'm going to thank my team, because you can't do things alone, right?
Of course.
But I can say, and they say, oh, you're going to take over this team someday, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. I've learned to just say thank you, and that is it, right? Because I think as women, again, we do the, oh, not me, like, try to downplay what our capabilities are. And I'm trying to do a better job of exuding that confidence and saying, yes, I can, And it is about those seeds planted that help build those confidence. So finding the right sponsors in your career is really important.
Right. And sometimes you don't seek them. I mean, I didn't know this person was a sponsor. He's just sitting, I mean, I know him, but he's just sitting next to me at this groundbreaking. And so, but what I had done and what you are doing and what other women are doing is they are demonstrating technical competence. They are demonstrating the emotional intelligence that's needed. They are demonstrating the skill set. It's easier for other people to see than it is for us to see ourselves. And so when someone else, and you already said this, but I'm just going to emphasize it again, when someone else sees that in you, say thank you, and then start thinking, oh, they're right.
Mm-hmm.
I have those skills. I can do this. And maybe I even want to do it.
Absolutely.
And how do I get it done? And how do I get to the next step? And then when you start having that confidence, that emanates. People see it. And they're very attracted to it. When I was chair of the board of Girl Scouts, one of the things I was told was that, and these were the numbers I was given. I don't necessarily agree with all the numbers, but let's just use them anyway. 15% of people are leaders. It's really closer to 7. But anyway, 15% of people are leaders. 15% of people are followers. No, I'm sorry. 15% of the people are on the fence and 70% are followers, or whatever. It's those 3 numbers. But the point is that most people are waiting for us who are the leaders to take the lead. And so if you are a leader, then understand that no, it isn't 85 or 90% everybody else are leaders. They don't want to be the leader. They want a leader to come in and say, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing. And if it's appropriate, this is how we're going to do it, because otherwise then the people figure out how we're going to do it. But this is what we're going to go do. And so it's really important to understand that that everyone isn't a leader, and that actually everybody doesn't want to be a leader.
But I think as being a female leader, and this is something I've brought up in other coffee chats, as a woman, right? We have the capability of being empathetic and decisive. And I think that is our superpower, especially as a leader. And I think we've been told so many times if we're too direct, we're some bad name,
pushy,
right?
aggressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, there's another word that goes there too.
But I think in the instance of leadership, we absolutely have to be decisive, but that doesn't take away from our empathetic or our emotional intelligence and our capabilities. It actually becomes more of a superpower, I think. So
absolutely. It's really amazing. There's now a woman CEO on the board that I sit on, and she has the decisions that she's made, the progress that she has made with this organization. It's absolutely unbelievable. She is just blowing the doors off, and she didn't get the job until her 3rd try. But on her 3rd try, oh my God, what an impressive job she's doing. And so, and the entire board feels that way. And most of the board is men.
So that leads right into this next question. So you've emphasized the importance of networking as a key job and life skill. What networking approach do you recommend for women who may feel like the only one in the room?
Well, since that's been my role almost my entire career, what I have, one of the skills I have learned is, first of all, you need to meet as many people as you possibly can. That's really, really important. And in engineering, many of those people are men. And what you find out, I've actually done this exercise. I have a talk that I give on networking. And somebody said, well, what if I don't? I said, you go up and you talk to somebody and someone said, well, I'm just really not good at small talk. And so I said, well, it's really a lot easier than you think. So one of the things, for example, if you and I were doing a networking exercise, I could come up to you today, Emma, and I could say, that's such a beautiful blue sweater. Where did you get it? Did you make it? I wouldn't ask you that unless I knew that you did it. But it just goes so well with your eyes. And then what usually happens is if you ask or say something to a person that is personal like that, they just launch. And then every now and then you nod your head, you say, you maybe ask another little question along the line of what they're doing. And after 10 minutes, they now think that they love you, that you are a gifted conversationalist, and that you are their best friend for life. And all you've done is let them talk. And so that's asking a question that allows somebody to talk, to feel comfortable, to establish the connection with you is how you make it work.
No, absolutely. So I was at our consultant symposium for my company this past weekend, and we were talking to a senior leader at my company about the next generation and trying to bring them in. And I introduced them to it's a male consultant, but who has a great team of young individuals and several females on his team as well. And he does such a great job. I've watched him at trade shows. He goes in and he feeds them the question, right? So he goes in, he shows them what they've engineered or what they've designed when they're creating these projects, and he explains each aspect of it. But then what he does is he feeds them some questions to ask so that he's helping them break into that conversation. And then he takes that step back and he watches it. And it's just giving them that empowerment to start the conversation, to ask a few questions, to understand the broader picture. And that's what helps them in their networking journey. So these are, young college new grads or individuals that are in their early career, maybe the first couple of years. And so I really admire that tactic. And it's something that I plan to kind of bring into my own world and kind of empowering that next generation as well as women that feel it hard to start the conversation, trying to draw them in and be able to start that. So
right. And what you said was really important in that when you see someone else behave with a leadership style that you like, you just adopt it. You take it and adopt it, because if it is working, then that's something you want to do too.
mm-hmm.
And if it's and usually it's something that's pretty easy to take under your wing, because what you're right, what that other individual is doing is empowering his employees. And that's what you want to do. You want to empower the people on your team so that they feel confident and that they do well in their lives and careers. You don't want people there working who are not happy.
No, absolutely. So last question, and then we can talk about whatever else we want to talk about. But with your long history in engineering and now in women's advocacy, what do you foresee as the next frontier for women in technical and security industries?
Well, what I want to see is more women.
We want to bring that 10% to maybe 50% like we are population wise, right?
50-50 parity. And you bring up a very good point. In 1999, I was involved with a conference that was put on by the National Academy of Engineering. And our slogan for that conference was 50-50 by 2020. We're in 2026.
And still at 10.
And we're still at 10. And so what I want is I want women to understand the importance of these careers, the value that these careers bring, the value that they bring to society. And I was involved in a project in 2004, which was called the Extraordinary Women Engineers Project. A book came out of that project. It was originally going to be called Extraordinary Women Engineers, but there was a survey done of 8th grade girls, and they said, we're not extraordinary. We don't aspire to be extraordinary. If you put that word there, that's a total turnoff to us. But what we want to do is we want to change the world. And so and that's what the book ended up being called, Changing Our World, because it was about women in engineering and we wanted it to be attractive. And so I think what we need to do in order to market these STEM careers, technical, security, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all of them, is to demonstrate the link to how they change the world. I mean, once people start understanding that security is really important and it protects hospitals and it protects water supplies and it protects electricity, and what would we do without water and hospitals and electricity, and everything else that it protects too. I mean, because it protects everything. And how important that is, then women will start understanding that too is changing the world and that those careers can therefore be attractive to them. And I think that's what's really important.
So you probably started seeing me like really start grinning, because one of my favorite topics I like to talk about is I truly believe that women lead with or engage in organizations and activities that drive purpose and value, right? So what I talk about this on numerous occasions, and people are probably like, Emma, can you pick a new topic, right? But what other purpose could you have than in the security industry and keeping people, assets, utilities, that if a utility company was taken out, that's months, years, right, for people to live in a totally different scenario than they're living today. And so the things that we're doing in the security industry drives immense purpose, and then also the value that we are that we get from that industry as well. So the value that as these women engineers can come up and start working on these technologies and see the fruit of their labors, and how that Duke Energy or another utility company is now protected with their people going in, but also their infrastructure is really critical. And so that's the biggest thing I want to highlight to individuals in looking at the security industry is most of the individuals that happened here, we haven't sought out security. And so I think if we can do one thing, it's really expose the purpose and the value that's driven from this industry.
Absolutely. In a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe more, I got contacted by the History Channel. And the History Channel asked me, what would be the impact on the US if we lost electricity? It turns out, and we can't fix it. And right now there are people in Tennessee and Mississippi who haven't had any power for 9 or 10 days, and it's very cold. And the answer is, if the whole US lost power, 90% of the population would be dead in 30 days. There's no way to deliver water. There's no way to deliver food. There's no heating or air conditioning, but there's no food. There's no gas, there's no food, there's no water. And so, the basic needs of most of us come from the grocery store, the gas station, and through infrastructure that's built into our house that requires electricity to work. And so when you think of the security industry, protecting that infrastructure is more important than 99% of the population understands. So I do think that provides tremendous value. And I do think that's changing our world. And so I think that that's how to get more women into these industries because of the value that they provide.
No, absolutely. Well, I am very grateful for your time today and all your wonderful insights and your advocacy and really paving the way because I know there are so many women that wouldn't be in the positions that they are today if it wasn't for your advocacy and your exposure to the illustrious careers that these women have had. So thank you so much. And I think this is the perfect Women in Engineering coffee chat to kind of segue to highlighting other security women's stories and other things to keep that the advocacy up and keep drawing more women in and fill up those history pages. So thank you, Jill. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Emma. It's been so much fun to be here today.
Absolutely. And tune in next time for another Women in Engineering series.
Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Emma Barkley, and this has been a Navigate Her Coffee Chat with my co-chair, Beth Anderson. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring and useful as you navigate your own path in security. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us for upcoming sessions, and feel free to reach out with feedback or topics you'd like to explore next. Until next time, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep leading.